2024 is just right around the corner, and moving to Davenport, Iowa could be a mistake. Now you may be asking, why is moving to Davenport, Iowa a mistake, especially in 2024? Well, let's just talk about it for a second. Number one thing is that the cost of living typically is the selling point for trying to move to Davenport, Iowa, and that is actually changing. So what do I mean? Well, specifically around the housing. Now, the housing, just like every market, has been going up, and we went from a average or median home price of about 160, 170 before 2020, and now we're sitting at around $200,000. That is a pretty substantial jump for us here in Davenport. Now, depending on where you're coming from, it may not be that big a difference for you, but to us it is, and it raised our cost of living. Now, do we see any of that end in sight? Well, fortunately, no. We do think that the prices of homes are going to go up, but why? Interest rates are all-time highs, and the prices at our all-time highs. Well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, what's going on is that in 2020, 2021, those interest rates were sitting at 2.5%, 3%, which means buyers could get into homes fairly affordably. And if you had a home, you could refinance in order to save yourself a few bucks in your monthly mortgage. So people are sitting at 2.5% and 3% interest rate, and they don't want to sell because the interest rates are high and the prices are high. So why would you want to get rid of an interest rate that is high and have to buy a more expensive house at the same time? Which means if people don't want to sell, they're holding on to their homes. Our inventory is not going up, so that means the buyers that are out there are still grabbing the properties that are available, which means that the prices are going to go up because the inventory is low, demand is still somewhat high. So prices of houses are going up, and we don't really see an end to that anytime soon. So the cost of living is going up along with the housing costs. Now, that being said, the cost of living in Davenport, Iowa is still fairly affordable. And if you want to get in, but you just don't know where you want to be, well, that's why people give me a call. My number is popping up down below. I am a licensed realtor here in the city of Davenport, and you want to know where you want to be, give me a call, send me a text, heck, send me an email if you want to. I'll be there to answer any questions that you might have. Now, in Davenport, Iowa, we're sitting at about 100,000 people, and it's really used to be known for an agricultural town and a manufacturing town, but things are sort of changing around that. And if agriculture was the reason that you're going to be coming to Davenport, well, you may have missed the boat. Well, actually you haven't. There still is a lot of agriculture, but there is a ton of other jobs. And yes, there's in manufacturing, but there are tech jobs, there are tech manufacturing jobs. We have a couple of robotics companies around, so things are looking up. But if you're coming for agriculture, well, it's not the town that it used to be, and it may not be the town for specifically manufacturing that it used to be. Yes, we still have places like John Deere, which is over in Moline. We have Arconic, which is a big aluminum factory. So we still have opportunities along those, but it's not as prevalent as far as a percentage of the jobs available. So you may want to think about it if that is something that was important to you and the reason that you are moving here. Now, it may not look like it now, but winter is coming. We are sitting in October in 2023, and Davenport's winter is coming, and they're expecting it to be cold and snowy. But to be honest, they're expecting to be cold and snowy every single year. And that is something that you got to consider. Depending on what climate you're coming from, it may be a big shocker for you. Somebody reached out to me from Africa the other day because of these videos, and that was one question he had, was what can he expect if he was moving to Davenport in, say, January. I told him you better get a bigger coat than you might think you need, because it's going to be a super big shock to the system if you're trying to move here in January and you're not used to that wintertime temperatures and snow. Now, this next one isn't really pertaining just to 2024, but it was something I had to deal with when I moved to Davenport, and I got to take you back to where I came from. I grew up in western Iowa, where we had the Les Hills. And in the Les Hills, we have an abundance of public land that you can go hunt and fish on, and there's just not a lot of people over there. I grew up in town, about 1,500 people, a small town called Logan, and you go out into the Les Hills, there's miles and acres of public land, and you're not gonna see anybody. But when I moved to Davenport, it's a little bit different story. There isn't a ton of public land, and the public land that is available has about 30 of your best friends, quote unquote, best friends with you when you're out trying to enjoy the outdoors. So that was a big bummer for me when I moved here. But again, there are options. We have Wildcat Den over in Muscatine. We have Scott County Park, which is just north of Davenport. And if you cross into Illinois side, we have Loud Thunder Park, which is another great option. But again, it's just a little bit limited in the amount of public land versus the amount of people. And to me, it's a little disappointing. So if that's something that is a concern for you, well, Davenport may not be the best option to move to in 2024. And speaking of winter in Davenport, some people may say that it's a little bit boring. Now, that's all dependent on your perspective. My perspective is that if you're looking for something to do, there are things to do. For example, in the wintertime, they have the ice sculpture contest in downtown Davenport. They have the Christmas fair, I think is what they call it, where they have shops all over selling their wares of Christmas items. And there's plenty of breweries to go to, which I personally like going to during the winter time. And if you're looking, there's things to do. But I will say that during the winter, it's not as abundant as far as events going on as it is during the summer. There's nonprofits you can participate with. For example, a big one that I get participating with is Big Brothers Big Sisters Putt Around, where they have, I think, 20-ish, 26-ish miniature golf holes sponsored by people around the Quad Cities. That is fun, exciting to go to. I'm actually on the committee for that. I really love that. But again, during the winter, the activities aren't as abundant as it is during the summer. So expect that if you're moving into the winter time, that there's just not as much to go on. But again, if you're looking for it, you can pretty much find it. Now, of the Quad Cities, which you'd think there's four, there's actually 5, 6, depending on what you count. But of the Quad Cities, Davenport is the worst when it comes to traffic. Now, I'm not saying that the traffic in Davenport is the worst that you've ever experienced, but of the Quad Cities, it's definitely the worst. Places I would avoid if you're worried about traffic, especially around the rush hour, would be Locust, maybe 53rd Street. River Drive's not too bad, but then you get interstates, Middle Road. There's a few around that you just want to be a little bit concerned about. But again, overall, traffic's not that bad. But if I had to choose one that had the worst, it's definitely gonna be Davenport in the Quad Cities. And speaking of traffic, one thing that affects traffic every spring, well, not every spring, but most springs, is the flooding that can occur from the Mississippi, specifically in downtown Davenport. Just last year, we had major flooding. It wasn't quite the record high, but I believe it was second place, and it shut down River Drive for an extended period of time. But the worst flood that we ever had was in 2019, and it shut down River Drive for absolutely months. And it definitely affected traffic, made Locust even worse because people had to go around downtown area. So it's something that happens. And if you're moving here, you want to make sure that you're purchasing a home that is not in the flood zone. And that's not just around the Mississippi. All the streams that come up to the Mississippi are the ones that are the biggest risk, because those streams can overflow their banks way more frequently than the Mississippi. The Mississippi can hold a lot of water, but if you're getting in one of those streams that we have a big downfall of water and the water table's up, good chance that you're gonna get flooded. You wanna make sure that you're not buying a home in the flood zone, because not only will it damage your home, but you're also gonna be paying for flood insurance, which can be extremely expensive, especially if your risk is higher. And honestly, that is why people give me a call, because those are the sorts of things that I check out before you end up purchasing a home. So if you have any questions, my number is popping up down below. You wanna know where you want to live? Well, I'm the guy to ask. But for now, let's just give you another video about Davenport, Iowa, right here.